Hey guys, I'm Boot. We're in New Jersey, and today we're going to love and hate stuff. So let's do it. So guys, today I am doing a love and hate episode on the Netflix adaptation of Death Note. I have been an anime fan for something like close to 10 years, and probably even before that, really. I got into like Inuyasha, and then it went on to like Cowboy Bebop and Ayataka 7. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's the name of the chick in the thing is Ayataka, the way they pronounce it, but it looks like Eureka, whatever. Anyways, this is about Death Note. Now, Death Note is an anime in which a kid picks up a notebook which gives him the power to kill people just by writing their name. And later on, he learns that he can control the means of death by writing the cause of death, the time of death, things like that. And this was just an amazing, amazing anime for me to get into. I thought that the fact that the main character, Light Yagami, was basically figuring that this was his duty, that he was chosen to do this, that he was made for this kind of thing, to clean up the world and become a god of a new world where there's no crime and no pain, no anything, and that people that he deemed to be unfit, or that God would be deemed, to be deemed unfit, would be wiped from the face of the earth. And this was something that really touched base with a lot of emotions, in life and just things. The world would be a better place if we didn't have crime or, poverty or any of these problems, or even bullies today is like a big thing. So, I was really intrigued in the storyline of this, and that was what made me follow this into when they did live action movies in Japanese. And I never learned Japanese. I would have loved to, have sat down or taken a class or something to learn this language. Eventually in the future, I would love to, and I would love to visit Japan just because of the diversity in their culture and beliefs and the way their system works. Anyway, getting back to Death Note, they released this movie. They announced it some years ago. I guess it was back in 2011 or something like that. They were going to do an Americanized live-action version. And I was stoked. I was like, yes, finally, okay, an Americanized version. But, unfortunately, the Americanized version of anime and things of that nature tend to lose a little bit, in translation. And even, as far as I understand, a lot of the people who watch anime in Japanese, they pretty much, tell you that even the English translation loses, so much emphasis on certain things. However, this movie was made by Netflix. And Netflix, usually has a decent budget, nothing close to Hollywood. But I gotta say, in this movie, the special effects were not bad at all. Really, surprisingly. The things I loved about this movie was that, of course, Willem Dafoe was Ryuk. And it wasn't just, an animation like they did in the Japanese. I don't know if they used motion capture or not, but the character generation was great in that movie. And it stayed very close to the anime. As to this one, they really weren't close to the anime, but they did use motion capture, and Willem Dafoe had a motion capture suit on, which was freaking awesome. However, it made the proportioning of his head and shape and fingers and everything a little different than I would have liked to see. I thought it was really cool, though. And of course, Willem Dafoe makes the ultimate bad guy, which is even better, Another thing I really liked was the creepy vibe kind of thing. Whenever Ryuk was in a scene, like in the beginning, it was like a lightning strike and the lights would go out and it would get dark, and then it would just get this creepy, eerie vibe, which was really cool. But in a sense, it was kind of cheesy. The other thing I thought was kind of cool was that it wasn't really a long movie. It was about an hour, 41 minutes. And I think in the Japanese adaptation of the live action, it was 2 hours to each movie. There were 2 movies that made up the series. And then there was even a spin-off called L Change the World. I have not seen that yet, and I'm dying to watch it. I just have to, I have to bear down and get it. but they did manage to tell the whole story. Now that brings me to things I didn't like or I hated about this movie. They didn't really tell the whole story, and they did Americanize it, in a way where they can make it more relatable to American people. But the things I did not like about this movie was, first off, they had a black Elle. Now, I get that diversity in Hollywood is a thing, and I get, no disrespect to the character who played Elle, because, for what it was, he did a very good job. But unfortunately, the writers took a lot of liberties with this one, and Elle was not Elle. I could see if he was more Elle-like from the anime, that would make more sense to me. But he really wasn't. Light, his backstory really fucked me up. Of course, they changed it from Light Yagami to Light Turner to make it Americanized. I get that. But when they first announced that they were doing a live action, they were thinking about doing a live action Americanized version. They were talking about doing Zac Efron as Light, which would be a perfect fit. Likewise, the likeness is very similar. They showed some pictures in which he very much had the exact likeness of Light Yagami from the Japanese anime. But, they went with someone else. They went with just a normal kid. And his mom dies in the, in the beginning. And it's by a criminal, so I kind of get the backstory being Americanized. But then again, in the anime, Light's mother was very much alive. And she was part of the story, but not in the way that, the story plot moves. She was more of, a supporting character. She was just there, in the background. And I kind of get why they did that, to give Light a deeper sense of justice. But then again, his sense of justice came from his father. And his father was a very justice, minded character. And, very upstanding and very, just proper, And that's what gave Light his, cold and calculating way, and to be more on the sense of logic than anything else. And that's one of the things I really didn't like, that when he picked up the book, automatically he was just like, oh yeah, this is cool, I'm going to try this out, and, whatever. And he picked it up, and it was so different. It was so different, as to where the Light in the beginning of the anime was like, this is a joke. I'm not going to play into this. And then later on, his curiosity got to him, and he was like, you know what, just in case, I'm going to pick this up. And, he does not seem like the best and brightest student of his class, which is one of those things that Americanized TV has kind of gotten. It just makes me angry. It makes me seem that, these characters are more relatable to newer generations, because they're saying that newer generations are too simple to understand the cold and calculated and, intelligent concept. That they're stupid, that they're not intelligent, and they can't relate to a cold and calculated character, such as the ones in the anime. In this one, Elle seems, like he was intelligent, but more prone to follow his emotions than logic, just like Light. And in the anime, they are basically one and the same person, with different agendas. They both have the same, mindset to, make justice their primary goal, but in different means. And so they are battling, and they are just equals throughout the whole thing. This makes you feel like Light is just some stupid kid who has a very strong sense of justice and is going to do whatever it takes to, push his form of justice on the world. And Elle, I don't know how to sum it up. Elle is kind of the same way, but he seems more calculated, but he's not away from pushing, his emotions, letting his emotions, deem what he's doing, emotions controlling his actions. And that kind of really pissed me off. I guess it's just what it is. America, it's disappointing. Then there's the character of Mia. Or I guess she would be equal to the character of Misa in the Japanese anime and Japanese version. But there's no second Shinigami or God of Death, and there's no backstory to Mia. I know in the anime there was Misa, who her parents were killed, and the same guy went after her because he was infatuated with her. But then there was a God of Death who was infatuated with her and changed the timeline by killing her killer so she wouldn't die. And in doing so, he died himself. And then she got her own Death Note because that was his Death Note. And then Rem took over, the second Shinigami, Rem, took over to watch over Misa and be her Shinigami. But there's none of that in this. And that kind of disappointed me too, because it kind of makes Mia a less psychopathic and, emphatic character than she was in the Death Note anime. So the backstory on Mia, there really is no backstory on Mia. She's just some girl that Light was like, hey, check this out, isn't this cool? I'm killing people. And then he was explained it to her, and then she kind of took it from her own thing, and that was pretty cool. But I thought that they kind of messed up when they had Mia touch the book. The rules are different. It was, if somebody touches the book, they can see Ryuk or, Rem or whatever Shinigami or God of Death. But in this one, they didn't do that, and they made it completely different. And then there was the 7 days rule that kind of pissed me off. I don't remember that from the anime. If there's a 7-day gap or something, I think it has to be... actually, I think it was just... they forget in 7 days or something like that. Because I do remember in the anime there was a time period where Light had himself locked up to prove that he wasn't the killer. But then I think at the same time somebody else picked up his book and used it, making them the new owner. And when somebody becomes the new owner of the Death Note, the previous owner loses all memory of everything that has to do with the Death Note. So they kind of had a little too much freedom, I think, with that. The killing of the FBI agents. It was a very elaborate scheme. A lot of planning went into that. And they had Mia do it instead of Light, which kind of pissed me off because she was writing in the notebook that would have transferred ownership over to her, which means she would have been able to see Ryuk. And I think that it kind of made Light seem a little neurotic or, psychopathic or, something wrong with him just to be talking to Ryuk and explain to her who Ryuk is. It's like his invisible friend throughout the movie that he talks to. And she's like, what? And he's like, oh, I'm talking to Ryuk. Okay, yeah, that's supposed to be fine. You're not crazy or anything. But, the bus jacking scene, they didn't even have the bus jacking scene, which was a crucial moment at learning the elaborate planning that goes in behind, some of these deaths. It was just like an insight, and it was a very amazing scene, a very action-packed scene where he, finds out that this guy's following him, and this is the elaborate scheme he uses to catch this guy's name and use this guy's name to kill him. And they didn't do that because I guess it would have brought another character into the fold, and that was Ray Pember and Ray Pember's wife, who later comes to accuse Light of being Kira or the killer. And so that wasn't there, and that was very disheartening for me to not see that part, because it was a very well done part in the live action Japanese version. Other than that, let's see, going into the death of Mia or Misa, the death of Mia I thought was a good, very close type of ending for her life. In the anime, she jumps off a bridge at the end of it, and it's kind of one of those things that you don't see but happens. And that's kind of where it kind of screws with my head a little bit, because Mia died before Light, but in the anime, Misa dies after Light, which I don't know if that's because she knows that Light died, because she gave everything she was to Light, because she thinks that he was the one who killed her parents' killer and, saved her from the killer. The death of Misa, is kind of like the death of Light. In the anime, Light dies because he's basically caught, and he manically tries to escape, and you see the heartbreak and the pain that all of this has caused him and changed his life, and he dies alone, wondering where everybody that he's, supposedly cares for him is, and ultimately he dies alone, and at the hands of Ryuk, who writes his name in his death note. And at the end of the Netflix movie, when Light, they think Light is going to die not because of Ryuk, because of L, which is contradictory to the anime, because Light eventually learns who L is, and they go back and forth, and finally it comes to a head where he learns L's name and he kills L. Speaking of L, L is, the storyline that they follow with L, the background, is very similar. It's very, close to the original, as to where, L was groomed for this kind of thing. He was, as an orphan child, he was groomed to be a successor, and become L, who has solved some of the greatest cases over the last century or something like that. And, but his mentor, Watari, in the original, they change his name to Watari, which they didn't really change his name, they just changed the pronunciation. And when they said Watari, I thought Atari. And I'm like, seriously? Like, how can I take this guy any way, shape, or form remotely serious after this? And it's funny because Watari was a Americanized type of character in the anime, as to where in the Netflix original, he was an Asian guy. So why not have an Asian accent to his name, Watari, instead of Atari or Watari? I don't know, but that kind of pissed me off. The other thing is bringing up the death of Light in the Netflix movie. He is sitting there talking to his father, and he has the notebook, but the page of the notebook that L uses, I guess, to kill him, they never really show if he dies. But Ryuk says something about how humans are so interesting, and he emphasizes that the Shinigami world is rotten, and he's bored. He needs something to do, so he drops this death note to see what happens, and hopes that it's an interesting time. But when he says that, it kind of gives you the feeling that L is about to kill Light using the death note. So that would make L the new keeper of the death note. And the fact that L did not kill his own or Light did not kill his own father, I think that was a little more idiotic, because in the series, Light kills his own father, because he gets in the way, because he gets in the way of creating his new world. Well, he will be deemed a god. And in the movie, he doesn't. And that just makes him all the more, calculated. It makes him weak. It makes him a slave to his emotions again. So, in essence, I gotta say, for all as much of the things that I liked about the movie, I really hated it. And it really made me sad for America, because we're turning into a bunch of fucking idiots ruled by our emotions. And we have to be more cold and calculated than that. And I think that's where the deviousness of the good guy, who is actually the bad guy, comes into play. And I'd like to see more of that brought back. So anyways, that's about all I got. Thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing. I'm glad to be back doing another Love and Hate. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.